Hello, welcome to Compelling. I'm Katy Wellesley-Wesley. With 18 years of experience in the art world, ranging from senior positions at blue-chip galleries to startups, I'm now a Paris-based consultant to brands, foundations, artists, and collectors. Thank you for joining me to listen to Compelling, a podcast exploring the intersection of art, culture, and luxury. I'll be interviewing visionary artists, cultural leaders, and brand innovators to find out how storytelling, mastery of craft, and collaboration come together to build community, engage audiences, and shape lasting legacies. Compelling offers listeners fresh perspectives on the ideas and aesthetics shaping luxury businesses and culture today. The global fragrance industry today is worth roughly $55 billion, with high-end fragrances accounting for about half of that. Yet fragrance plays an outside role in the world of luxury. It's high margin, high volume, and importantly, it's often the very first luxury purchase that a consumer makes, something that couture houses have long known and capitalized upon. My guest today, Marc Chaya, started his career in strategy at Ernst Young, becoming their youngest ever partner. But in 2009, he took a different path, an entrepreneurial path, to build a perfume house with Kurkdjian, and to put the Perfumer at the center of a Maison. Today, the house is a global reference in contemporary luxury, and Marc has become a leading voice on the subject of authorship, creativity, and the future of the fragrance industry. Let's meet him. Well, Marc Chaya, thank you very much for agreeing to be a guest on Compelling. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for hosting me, Katy. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to get straight into it because there's just such a lot to talk about. You grew up in Lebanon.
Indeed.
So I'd like to know a little bit about your early years. What did growing up in Beirut in that period teach you? And was it already a creative existence even early on for you?
I was born in 1973. Mm-hmm. It was about 3 years before the Civil War came to a start. This part of my life, I would say, is a very colored aspect of a child's life, and it leaves an imprint in one's personality. Growing up in a country that is extremely tolerant, extremely open to the world, we say Lebanon is a bridge between the Orient and the Occident, a country where people speak several languages, where going to Harvard is more valued than owning a Porsche, is something that really drives your education and drives your value. And on the other side, destruction, hatred, war are also elements that, for the child that I was, have created typical things that we call today PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but they have also shaped a certain vision of life and a certain vision of our humanity, witnessing how ugly a man or woman can become, and at the same time realizing that those same people were capable of their best. And as a child, I would find refuge to basically heal my anxiety, to help me go through trauma. I started reading, I started looking at architectural books, I started watching ballet. My parents had a massive library that I started reading, and I found refuge and repair in the harmony of beauty, in the harmony of what men and women can bring to life when it comes to creativity. I think my childhood in Lebanon was, in a way, forging my personality between discipline, war, insecurity, instability brings resilience. And so all of this helped me in life, helped me be very proactive, very fast, always in combat mode. But also that brings nuance through the love of artistry, the love of creativity, the ability to believe into what's best in human and to make a bet that trying to become a better person, trying to do things that impact people's life positively is actually a game changer, has also shaped my personality.
I mean, it sounds like it also created a sense of urgency, like the time is now, kind of, that you got to get on and pursue the dream and work hard, and that things can't necessarily wait.
But a nuanced one. It's not just a sense of urgency saying I need to do things for the sake of doing them. It was the sense of urgency that I needed to do things that had an impact. And this, I think, is very, very different.
Next, you went in quite an academic, traditional direction, and then were one of the youngest partners ever at Ernst Young. So I wonder, did you already have a desire? Were you looking for an entrepreneurial opportunity? Or was it that sort of serendipitous meeting with Francis Kurkdjian that opened a window in your mind?
It's a mix of many things. I was not meant to go to Ernst Young. I didn't want to study finance and economic science. My dad really pushed me, saying to me, I wanted to be an artist. I was drawing as a kid. I loved music. I wanted to be an architect. I was really drawn by creativity, and I'm still very creative. Yet I also had intellectual capabilities. I was good in math and I was good in reasoning. And my dad told me, you can't earn your life by being an artist. And so he pushed me towards a more academic, more scientific approach, which I would never thank him enough, because he basically helped me to train on these dimensions which were accessible to me. And going to Ernst Young, to me, was like attending an MBA. It was a school of excellence. It was my field of studies. And I have learned so much there, so much, that has enabled me to become the successful entrepreneur that I became. I don't think without those EY years, I would have been comfortable negotiating deals, creating a global platform for a small company to grow into 52 countries, inventing business models, articulating growth path, hiring, inspiring, and all of that was the things that I learned at the Ernst Young MBA school. Yeah. So I had a very, very diversified career. And at the beginning of my career with Ernst Young, especially in the first 3 years, I had the really intimate conviction that I wasn't good enough and that I was going to be fired and sent back to Lebanon. And so from there, every end of the year, they would tell me, we can't really assess you amongst your peers. And the fear that I had was that I wasn't good enough. So they cannot really assess me amongst my peers. So it means I'm not good enough. And the answer to that was, we can't even compare you to the category above. So we will make you jump to the category even above. And so from there, I was made senior manager in 5 years instead of 9. I was appointed global telecoms markets leader at 32. And I was made partner in what I believe is still a record of 9 years. But something fundamental was lacking, creativity. Going back to your question about entrepreneurship, I think entrepreneurship is also, in a way, a manifestation of a creative mind. Thinking of something that doesn't exist, imagining a path, a strategy, an ecosystem, a vision of what this company can be in 10 years is also a creative approach. And while at EY, I was given the opportunity to take a sabbatical back in 2001. There was a telecom bubble in finance, a telecom bubble that bursted, and the business wasn't good enough. So they allowed me to go for a year sabbatical. I ended up going to Argentina and learning Spanish. And coming back from Argentina, I've decided to start a real estate company where I would purchase high potential properties, renovate them. Remember, I wanted to be an architect, and then sell them back to making someone happy, where they can go into a beautiful home, and channeling my creativity and my basically entrepreneur spirit. I was making more money doing this than the money that I was making with Ernst Young, and they allowed me to do that. And it was also at my years at Ernst Young that I met, by chance, Francis Kurkdjian at a dinner party. And it was this encounter that, from one thing to another, led to a friendship, and then eventually to the creation of Maison Francis Kurkdjian. But that I'm sure you would want to know more about.
Of course. I mean, I'm just curious, whose dinner party was it?
It was a mutual friend. His name is Stéphane. It was in Montmartre. And Francis came a little bit after others. And, sometimes you click and you become friends. And a friendship, at that time, you don't know that you're going to become friends. But obviously, a friendship started. And that was back in 2004, which takes us now to about 22 years of collaboration.
Amazing. I mean, that's a long time. So just for the listeners who may not know the founding story of Maison Francis Kurkdjian, the thing that I think is absolutely central is that you learned by speaking to Francis that often the perfumer, the nose, as they are pejoratively called, is never really given any visibility or credibility when a perfume is created. And you said, well, now we're going to do that differently. We're going to actually put the creator right at the heart of a maison and celebrate that act of creativity.
So let's go back to that. 2004. Perfumers were known amongst the industry, but they were not appearing anywhere. They were women and men behind amazing creations, yet it would always be the name of the brand, the name of the celebrity that would represent the brand, and marketing would create value, but that value was also undermining the legitimacy of a perfumer and the value of creativity. Remember, we talked about my upbringing in Lebanon and how this shaped me and how art, harmony, and creativity were a repair factor to my childhood. This has also created in me the basis of an activist. I consider myself to be an activist, and I like to intervene whenever I can to repair things that the same way I had to repair myself after the war episode. And when I learned from Francis that he was the creator behind Jean-Paul Gaultier Le Male, which was a perfume that my mother gave me for my 19th birthday, and that I adored, that he had created green tea for Elizabeth Arden, which was another perfume that I was exposed to and that I loved. At that time, he was already talking with Elie Saab, a very famous Lebanese designer, and working on creating a perfume for Elie Saab. And I was simply wondering, and I asked him very, boldly, how come I don't even know your name? I mean, I was really genuinely under the idea that Jean-Paul Gaultier created Jean-Paul Gaultier Le Male because this is the brand name. And so this is where I was confronted to, some might call it an injustice, other can call it an opportunity. For me, it was an opportunity to say, there is something that is a paradox. Can we fix it? And if we can, what would be the value of doing that? And this is where the friendship was interesting, because we went on a dialogue. Francis was at a stage in his life where, say, as an actor, he wanted to step from being in front of the camera to behind the camera. He wanted to be involved in the overall concept of the perfume, not only receiving a marketing brief that would tell him exactly what was expected from him, but maybe to be involved in a campaign, maybe to be involved in the name, maybe to be involved in the packaging, maybe to be involved with the entire story, and maybe also wanting to have more freedom in the way he could tell his stories. It's the only form of creativity where the talent is very often asked to compose within a frame. As if you're a contemporary artist and all you can do is one form of expression, which is portrait. And that's it. You can't do anything else. You have to depict the portrait of the person in front of you. Yeah. This is not what happens in the arts world. And so our encounter between two young people, at the time I was going on 30. I was still, young in my career. And Francis was going on his 34th birthday. This ideal that we had was to allow Francis Kurkdjian, which to me at the time, without any doubt, was a genius of creativity. His dialogue, the depth of his knowledge, the depth of his sensitivity went far beyond perfume into the deep understanding of what was shaping the art of time, as artists usually do. Artists have this ability to feel transformation, to feel how our society is shifting, and to come to us with a proposition that would create something new in our mind, strike us, and elevate us. This is what I call the power of harmony and the power of art. So the vision since day one was to create something that would allow Francis Kurkdjian to express his vision freely. In the same time, that would allow Marc Chaya, the younger person, the younger version of myself at the time, to also explore his creativity, to also unspread his wing. I think the founder of LinkedIn once said, an entrepreneur is someone that jumps off the cliff and builds their wings on the way down. This is exactly what I wanted to do. I was tired of this massive structure, which was extremely, extremely beneficial. It was a huge training platform, but it was a bit too rigid for me, the platform of EY, and wanting to jump off the cliff into an adventure that, remember, had to bring something more than just commercial success. It had to have meaning. And by the way, everything we've done with Francis at Maison Francis Kurkdjian was never dictated by commercial success. It was never dictated by our desire to make money. It was only dictated by our almost non-negotiable desire to allow creativity to express itself freely and to come up with a proposition that would be uplifting, genuine, and transformative.
And so was it easy then to attract investment? Or perhaps you didn't need it. With that conviction, did people get it right away?
We live in a world where instant reward has become a utopia. We forget that building something is not posting a story that gets 2 million likes immediately and then you would say it was easy. No, it wasn't easy. It was absolutely not easy. And if those things were easy, we would know. This is why I'm very inspired today to see young entrepreneurs that start their company, that want to express their vision. And by discussing with them, we always share about how hard it is. You need to work really hard. You need to have convictions. You need to be able to confront failure and to continue going. I think Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Or if you fall on your face, you're still going onward. So these are two expressions that have always inspired me because no, it wasn't easy. Well, what did I do? Of course, with Ernst Young, I was able to save money. Francis had an amazing career as a perfumer and he was also able to save money. But I had to sell my properties. I had to put myself at risk. I had to invest everything, including my shirt, as we said at the time. And I had to jump off the cliff, not knowing how we were going and which wings we were going to build. We were lucky to meet a beautiful mind in the person of Annette Roux. She's an entrepreneur, the owner of Beneteau Group, which is the world leading company in sailing yacht. And Annette really believed in us. She saw two young, talented people and she loved the story and she was our first investor. For the first 3 years, everything was uncertain. We were starting from scratch. We were building a fragrance house in an ecosystem where perfumers were unknown. I was going to the four corners of the globe. I focused on the US and France in the beginning because I thought that a luxury house that carries the vision and the name of an amazing perfumer and that is rooted in values such as craftsmanship, know-how, quality, imagination, etc., had to be successful in its own markets. And the US and France were some of the most mature, most sophisticated, most competitive markets. So starting the company in the US, I had to go to Neiman Marcus, to Saks, to Bloomingdale's and others. At the time, it wasn't Bloomingdale's. It was mainly Saks and Neiman Marcus. And to explain to them that we wanted to start with them a luxury fragrance house that was eponymous of a perfumer at the time. We were in 2008. We launched the Maison in 2009 commercially, but we started the development in 2008. At that time, the market was already flooded with marketing-led concepts. They were all amazing concepts. They were bringing difference and quality in perfume, but no one was talking about the perfumer. And I was here trying to explain what a perfumer was. I was here trying to explain why in our Maison, marketing would be at the service of creativity and not the other way around. So no, it wasn't easy at all, but it was extremely structuring. It was extremely correct and just, but it required a lot of courage, a lot of work, and overcoming failure.
I mean, it sounds like you've always been on the same page with Francis in terms of creativity is coming first. But obviously, the way that most of the time it splits out, he's the creator and you're the business brain. So has there ever been a moment of tension between you where the two pieces of the puzzle were in opposition?
Saying no would be absolutely unreasonable because there is inherent tension between something that is meant to be absolutely free, creativity, and something that has to be absolutely structured, business strategy. Now, I understand that in the way the industry functions, we go into binary thinking. He is the creator, he is the businessman. He does this, he does that. This being a concept, a creation, that being finance and a strategy. It was never the way we functioned. And it has been working for, I told you, 22 years. So obviously, there is a lot of value when these two components come together, one at the service of the other, rather than opposing into failure. A beautiful idea can find a beautiful platform to thrive if there is an architecture around it, and if that architecture is safe, sound, and evolutive. Otherwise, you can see many beautiful ideas that are killed because they were not launched at the right time, they were not launched in the right channel, they were too early for people to understand them, and so on and so forth. And you can build the most stunning Rolls-Royce in terms of business management, but if you don't have the right product, then you've built yourself a Rolls-Royce that has no gas in its engine, and then it's going nowhere. And so, yes, our duo acts as something that is very unique. It happens. It happened already in the story of creativity. I will not compare us to other, but it's interesting to see that there are some emblematic duos. For example, one of them is French, was very known in the 1970s and the 1980s, and allowed the creation of Yves Saint Laurent. And these two were Saint Laurent and Berger. You have Domenico Del Sole with Tom Ford. You've had also other very emblematic business and creative duo. In the way we function with Francis, he is the creator when it comes to the concept of the fragrances he wants to create, when it comes to the stories that inspires him, when it comes to the fundamentals of our scented stories. Then I would become his first sounding boards, and my creativity steps in to start a dialogue about how can we push it further, and vice versa. I can come up with and articulate a strategy, but he would come and engage with me in a dialogue in how can we make this strategy better. So say it, I have an amazing idea and it's 90% viable, but something is lacking. If this idea is transformative and great, over the past 22 years, I've learned that Francis would be the person that can bring those lacking 10% to make it exceptional. And vice versa. If he comes to me with a creative concept, with an idea, I would be the one to be able to structure it or to bring what is lacking to make it absolutely viable and absolutely striking. This dialogue has been going on for 22 years, and it has been one of the founding stones of the success of the Maison.
This season of Compelling is presented in partnership with Cahiers d'Art, the legendary Paris publisher founded in 1926. For a century, Cahiers d'Art has collaborated with icons like Picasso, Duchamp and Calder, and continues today with leading voices such as Ellsworth Kelly, Philip Perrino, Arthur Jaffa and Rosemary Truckle. Cahiers d'Art is also the home of the legendary Picasso Catalogue Raisonné, the definitive 33-volume record of Picasso's work and one of the most important art publications of the 20th century. Beyond publishing, Cahiers d'Art is also a gallery on Rue de Dragon in Paris. You can discover more at cahierdart.com. Recently, in the autumn, you had this extraordinary exhibition at the Palais de Tokyo. It's obviously been something that creatively, Francis has always collaborated with artists. But bringing that to the public and showing them and exposing this kind of sensibility and this long history of collaboration, I mean, that serves obviously a strategic purpose as well, which it sort of underscores the artistry of what Francis is doing and what the Maison is now doing in his support.
Long story short, when I met Francis Kurkdjian, the first thing that I had in mind was to encourage him to continue and amplify. He had started a few, he had done something with Sofical, which was the smell of money, which has allowed him to realize for the first time that he could put his talent at use very freely. Because when Sofical asked him to create the smell of a dollar bill, he was used and trained to ask her exactly what she wanted. And she said, I don't know, just give me whatever you want. So it was a moment for him of realizing that he too had the ability to create freely. And so when we started working together at the beginning as friends, I was still with Ernst Young. The one thing that came to my mind was the urgency to go in the direction that he already had in mind, which was to take perfume out of the bottle. Because in a fragrance bottle, perfume is, by convention, a sensual accessory. It has to be positive. You cannot wear the smell of, say, Saint John the Baptist beheaded by Salome, painted by the Caravage. It's impossible. No one would want to wear that because it's too sad and it's too cruel. However, when you look at the Caravage work, it's absolutely stunning. It's going to take you in your guts, and you will engage in a dialogue between what Caravaggio had to say to you and what you are observing as a viewer. And so we were never exposed to this in the perfume world. We have been taught that perfumers are chemists. We call them a nose. A nose is a very technical thing. It means that they have this incredible ability to be technicians through their nose to be able to compose. Well, Picasso said, first learn the technique and then you can break it. And this is what Francis Kurkdjian and many perfumers do. Do you focus when looking at a canvas, say Simon Antaille, or going back to Picasso, on the brush that he used and the quality of the red and the origin of the yellow?
No, I mean, it's a sensory experience.
It's a sensory experience. And it's the same. Of course, there is a lot of technique to get there. There is a lot of hours of learning. But technique alone doesn't create any emotion. And technique alone is not going to trigger anything else than maybe simple harmony. But when you feel the power of a creation, there is something that Kant used to call transcendence, which is going beyond something into a whole new world. And this is what perfumers do. They have to go through 3-4 years of technique. They have to go through chemistry. But eventually, when you come up with something as powerful, say, as Baccarat Rouge 540, which has become a global phenomenon, not because it was in a distinctive bottle, not because it had millions of dollars of campaign in marketing, we spent zero, not because it was available widely. It was only available in about 500 doors globally, yet it's one of the most sold and celebrated perfume in history. It is because artists have this ability to feel the world that is changing and to come up with a proposition that is, in a way, their ability to announce the art of time, to fabricate the art of time, and to generate with us something that we were not used to feeling. A new sense of emotion, a new horizon, a new vision.
And it is like that. I remember when I first smelt it, it's very...
Correct.
It's transportive.
Correct. And so going back to the exhibition, we started really accelerating. My role next to Francis was really to empower him and to create this structure. Again, going back to, I consider myself as the architect of the architecture, creating this long-term vision, creating this Rolls-Royce that would allow his out-of-the-ordinary creativity to foster and blossom. Artists throughout history have always dialogued with each other into what, way down the road, we would call an artistic current. Think of the very strong transformation that we were facing in the beginning of the 20th century, pre-World War I and World War II. We were moving from horses to cars, to industrialization, from candle to electricity, from walking to flying. Everything was changing. And yet at the same time, Picasso, whose father, like my father, by the way, put him into technique, put him into winning contest of absolutely perfect drawing and painting, started going into cubism, where Nijinsky and Stravinsky went with Le Sacre du Printemps, breaking everything that we knew about classicism. Classicism was disappearing, and a very almost brutalist, industrialized view of the world was arising. Look at Walter Gropius creating the bohos. That lasted, 11, 12 years, you know better than me, and changed architecture forever. Einstein was talking about relativity. All of these people knew each other. Go after World War II, where Peggy Guggenheim left the US to go to Venice and started her collection. She knew everyone, from the birth of Dadaism to Pollock to all of these outstanding, what we call now mid-century modern artists. She forged one of the most beautiful collections into what became an artistic current. Why did all of these people know each other? They simply, to my humble point of view, had this outstanding ability and powerful ability through their own field to describe to us in a very healing way the transformation that were being laid in front of us and that we cannot understand. They were synthesizing the violence of change into a healing harmony of art. Right?
Yeah.
And so fragrance has been kept out of this ability, I would say, by omission, by ignorance, or by complexity. It's because we are never taught to mix essential oils. So we cannot really understand the concept of creation in the fragrance world. Taking perfume out of the bottle, which we did with Francis, was an expression of pure artistry in the fragrance world. And because Francis, like other artists, has been in conversation with many artists throughout his career, 30 years, 21 years, 22 years together. Last year, when the clock ticked 30 years, I took my phone and I called him and said, Francis, we have to do something. We have to do a retrospective to show how perfume is essential in our life, but also to allow the viewers to express for the first time, I believe, in modern history, the pleasure of art through their nose. So it wasn't a brand exhibition. It was an art exhibition. It was a very rich art exhibition looking at visitors queuing 2 hours and a half. It was the most visited exhibition at Palais de Tokyo since the appointment of Guillaume Desanges as the CEO, as the current CEO of Palais de Tokyo, I think 7 or 8 years. People were queuing for 2.5 hours to go in. And when they would go out, what made me feel so fulfilled was to see the smile, the uplifting smile on their face, because they were able, again, to experience the pleasure of art, the universal pleasure of art through their nose by going through 30 years of dialogue and conversations between Francis Kurkdjian and other artists, whether they are photographer, set designers, visual artists, conceptual artists, porcelain makers like Wan Liya from China, or even being immersed in a global work that we called Perfume, the Alchemy of the Senses, around Baccarat Rouge 540, feeling the scent through other forms of artistic expression in the smell of Baccarat Rouge 540.
So for listeners who didn't have the great opportunity to go and see the exhibition, it was a series of installations, chambers, each of them representing as one of the signature scents, or artistic collaborations. As you said, the Sophie Calle Scent of Money was in there. It was an exhibition unlike any I've been to.
And the magic happened, and it was the consequence of a collegial work. Jérôme Neutre, who is behind everything that was inside. He's the one who structured the workflow. He's what we call in French the commissaire of the exhibition, did an outstanding work. Our partners that built this exhibition did an outstanding work. The mediators, the people that were there accompanying the public, did an outstanding work. It all came together very smoothly and with a lot of harmony, because there was a lot of sense, there was a lot of meaning. So you entered through our recent installation in China, which was Rose
Roses,
correct. And then you went into the Versailles era, and then you had Yann Thomas, which was the ability for the viewer to drink perfume, because in the past, cologne could be drink as something to heal your mind, but also your body. And then going through the virtual reality installation and the work of Christelle Boulay, etc. It was absolutely stunning. And throughout every element of the exhibition, the viewers were exposed to a dialogue between fragrance and another form of what we call art. So is fragrance an art? Yes. When it's taken out of the bottle freely, it is an art. And it was the first time that we were able to appreciate this art through the sense of smelling.
Connected with the extraordinary exhibition at the Palais de Tokyo, Marc, you have also created a documentary, which I understand is coming soon to Prime. Tell me a bit more about the motivation to make a documentary.
So this documentary called Icon, The Alchemy of the Senses, we talked about perfume sculpture of the invisible, and one of the key part of the exhibition was an installation called The Alchemy of the Senses, which gathered 5 artists to express the emotion behind Baccarat Rouge 540. A few years back, I was with one of my friends who is an anthropologist of knowledge. His name is Dov Bezman. And I was discussing my frustration about the lack of acknowledgement of creativity in perfume. And he, in a very simple way, put it by saying, the problem is that perfume is invisible. Music is invisible, but music can take life through the interpreter, through the instrument, through the orchestra. And he said, what about you ask other artists that you respect to express the emotion that they have when they smell Baccarat Rouge? And this was the emergence of the idea of creating this installation. And then I went to Francis with his idea, and as always, I started and he continues. And he gathered people that he loved, people with whom he was already in conversation, or people with whom he wanted to be in conversation. So we talked about the five senses, the alchemy of the senses. And so for the sense of tasting, he picked up Anne-Sophie Pic, who's a very close friend of his. He's been working with her for years, and asked her to create something that resonates with Baccarat Rouge 540, which is a scent that her husband wears. We then went to Elias Crespin, who's a cinetic artist that we both fell in love with back in 2010. He was at FIAC, and he was with a gallerist, and he does those mobile that move in air. It's kinetic. And so he asked Elias to create something around Baccarat Rouge. And then Katia and Marielle Labec has been part of the Maison Francis Kurkdjian, friend with David Chamelin. Since we started the Maison in 2009, they interpreted an electronic version of Pavane pour une enfant défunte of Ravel, which was on our website. And so and Francis has done so many other artistic conversation with them, with the Trilogie de Cocteau, which was the most recent one a year ago at the Paris Philharmonie. And then Cyril Test, who's a very close friend of Maison, he's a set designer. And last but not least, the House of Baccarat, with whom we were working on a beautiful crystal piece for this year that really represents the ultimate, the essence of the expression of Baccarat Rouge 540, housed in a new bottle with a new interpretation by Francis Kurkdjian, limited to 54 pieces a year. And so we started with this project, and we thought that it would be nice to keep it, to in a way film it, and to make something on it. And it was highly interesting for the producer who we consulted and who we knew. His name is Claude, and Claude decided to work with us on following the making of this immersive art piece that was at Parfum Sculpture de l'Invisible at Palais de Tokyo. So he followed, since inception, how the dialogue between Francis and each of these artists, and how in the end this crystallizes in one masterpiece that was presented during the exhibition. This documentary will be released in the fall. The avant-premiere will happen in April in Paris and then in New York. And it's called Icon. It's a series of documentaries called Icon. And the title is The Alchemy of the Senses, One Perfume, Five Artists.
How amazing. Well, can't wait to see it. A little more about our sponsor. In 2026, Cahiers d'Art celebrates its centennial, 100 years at the heart of modernism. To mark the occasion, Cahiers d'Art will stage a global program of exhibitions at the Musée Picasso in Paris, the MoMA in New York, the Guggenheim Collection in Venice, and many more museums worldwide. Alongside these, a landmark centennial book and new editions of the historic review will honour a century of creativity. You can discover more at cahierdart.com. The reception was extraordinary. People queuing for 2.5 hours. Is it going to tour? Will you be opening it somewhere else?
It's a dream. It's a dream because this exhibition also serves a purpose, which again I told you that purpose was not to do advertising for Maison Francis Kurkdjian.
Although it can't hurt.
Of course, it's not. And this is the virtuous strategy that I have always been very careful to build. When one positive things add positively to the other. However, the primary purpose was, and I think for those viewers who were there, they were able to be exposed also to a note that I wrote and to some videos that were shown of me talking about the absence of intellectual property in the field of the fragrance creation. Why is that today a reality? It's because we do not understand the artistry behind creating a perfume. We were not exposed to the technique of creating scent. And so we went on and decided that we cannot protect intellectually a perfume creation, a perfume formula. And this is something that needs to be repaired, that needs to be changed. It is absolutely illogical, disrespectful, and unfair that people such as Calice Baker, Francis Kurkdjian, Jacques Cavalier, Alberto Morillas, and I can name hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, enlight our life every day, come up to us with beautiful creations. And we tell them, listen, what you have created has no value. We can protect the shape of the bottle where your perfume is going to end up. We can protect the name that it carries. We can protect the packaging. But we can't protect what's in the bottle and what is eventually the source of joy and the source of artistic pleasure. And this has to change. And for me, this exhibition is a pedagogical way to build a bridge between this very unknown field of creation and the public. We understand music. We understand design. So if I tell you I am doing a song that reproduces Beyonce, I would get a lawsuit. But if I am reproducing a scent that copies a scent from XYZ, then I'm not being held to any responsibility. However, if I copy the bottle, I'm being held to the responsibility of copying. If I use the name and the story, I can be attacked for parasitism. However, if I rob a creator from his creativity, I'm not held accountable. This is something that we need to change, I believe.
Okay, so I think I know roughly what your answer is going to be to this, but there is an idea that I have heard before that the duplication of, for example, a handbag, the people buying that dupe somewhere in, I don't know, China or in a market somewhere, they're not the audience for the real thing. They couldn't afford it. But the fact that that bag exists, it's not the real thing, but the fact that it exists and they are aspiring to own it, maybe it drives desirability and aspiration to one day be able to obtain the real thing.
It's a complex question. The answer has to be mindful of respecting the consumer, because as a consumer, you cannot be blamed to doing certain things that are made available to you. Let's go back to the comparison maybe between a handbag and a perfume, but also to the fundamental element that stands coherently between both. Behind a beautiful handbag and behind a beautiful fragrance creation, there's a talent. There's a creator that is capable of uplifting us by bringing to us things that trigger our emotion, makes us feel better, and so on and so forth. I elaborated enough around that. By not respecting their creation, we are threatening the very element that makes us happier and that makes us feel better. So what is the incentive for a creator to study as hard as 3 to 5 years and then to continue working? Francis Kurkdjian is one of the most hardworking, and every artist that you look at, from Karl Lagerfeld to any contemporary designer today, they work day and night. They work day and night. They are very tough on themselves. They have no compromise on quality. They have an obligation to transmit. They have teams around them. They invest hours and millions into trying to bring the best to the world. If we do not respect their creation, then we are threatening an ecosystem that eventually impacts our life in better. Now, a handbag, if I copy a handbag by putting exactly everything in it, it's impossible. I could be inspired by it. Of course, you cannot just copy it exactly as it is,
because you never have the same materials.
But perfume is invisible. Perfume is invisible. It doesn't come with a logo. The logo is on the bottle. This is why I can protect my bottle. I can protect the shape of the bottle and I can protect the name of the scent. But what is inside is invisible. It's intangible. It doesn't mean music is invisible. Now let's draw the parallel between perfume and music. Music is invisible. It can take shape through the instrument or the orchestra, but it's still invisible. Can I dupe Beyonce? Would you say that you're not going to download, you're not going to get your Spotify membership and dupe Beyonce? I don't think so, because it's not possible by the law. So the idea that dupes today are proliferating, you're right, it's more accessible. And this is where we need to challenge ourselves as an industry about what are we offering and at what premium. Coming up with a beautiful product that took years of elaboration with high quality, but also in a very solid and safe distribution network that employs hundreds of people and their families live from that educates them, with a big network of locally sourced suppliers, with a passion about quality, with years and years and years of investment on creativity and innovation. This doesn't come cheap. This is costly. And so as long as there is coherence between the product and its cost, then consumers are never going to blame you for selling it at a certain price. It's when there is a gap between the element and the price, this is where consumer can be deceived. And as a consumer, I can feel the same. If you buy something that is of low quality and is sold at a high premium, just because it's a luxury product, then it's not going to work. However, when you look at the most beautiful luxury houses in the world, and we're lucky to be part of a group that has many of these, at LVMH every day, I see this passion for quality. I see how there is really, we are uncompromising. We are told by the group, never compromise on quality, never compromise on the well-being of your teams, never compromise on investment, because a beautiful product has to be creative, but it has to be also beautiful in its quality and beautiful in its experience. And so all this comes at a cost. But so when you say, I can't get access of Baccarat Rouge 540, I can challenge this idea, because a 35 ml bottle is still something that is accessible. Having the ability to copy it exactly as it is. I'm not talking inspired by, or you take it and you compose from it and you create something new. This is absolutely part of the history of art, right? Andy Warhol could be inspired by Basquiat. And so this is not, the problem is copying it exactly the same, but giving it another name is something that threatens the very essence of creativity, because then what would be your incentive as a creator to work so hard if you know that the next day someone can just take it off the shelf and offer it at a smaller price? Now also, how can I offer a dupe at a smaller price? I didn't have to pay anything on innovation. I didn't take any risk, because, you know, when a scent like Baccarat Rouge works, it's not just random and it's not overnight. It took us 7 years of hard work with Neiman Marcus exclusively to build it. And then from there, we took it to Saks, and from there, we took it globally. And we are still uncompromising on the quality of it and the training and every element that goes into it. So this comes, you know, with a certain investment. If you take it for free and you offer it without having any risk and any investment, then of course you can sell it for a lower price premium. So look, it's not a criticism, it's an open debate. For me, the real debate is around the lack of intellectual property in the fragrance world. And this lack of intellectual property is, to me, still an injustice. I started Maison Francis Kurkdjian with the idea that we can repair the void that the market had left about the essential place of a perfumer in a story and in luxury. Today, I feel that the void that IP is leaving is also something that we have to repair.
I mean, I agree with you. It's obviously
and one can disagree.
Not that you need my.
It's a very personal, vision, but it's also a vision that respects everyone. And the idea is not to polarize everyone by saying you're not doing the right thing or you're being bad. The question is not there. The question is, once we know all that, what do we do with it? You know, when Francis came up with this creation, first, I always like to remind our listeners and our consumers that this story was not meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. We didn't sit with our marketing team saying, let's do a collaboration with the House of Baccarat and let's do this because it's going to work. It was Francis coming to me in 2012 at a dinner party that he was hosting in his apartment, and we were drinking champagne with a Baccarat glass that he was offered this by Baccarat. He was an ambassador at the time of the House of Baccarat, doing a dialogue between him as a perfumer and the master glassmaker of Baccarat. And he came to me saying, Marco, in a couple of years, I hear it's their 250th anniversary. And I would love to be able to express in a perfume the alchemy of crystal, where you need the power of the craftsman that is blowing. You need fire, you need earth, and you need water. And I want to express this alchemy of the senses and the light of crystal, the weight of crystal. It's absolutely, the light is absolutely pure and crystalline, whereas the weight of a glass is heavy. And so we first went to the House of Baccarat in 2012, talking to them about their upcoming anniversary and the idea that we would love to see what if Francis can create something in celebration of this anniversary. They were not interested at the time. And then there was a change of leadership. And the new leader was interested in diversification and finding new ways to get revenue streams. And she was looking at ways to maybe get a fragrance license with one of the big players on the market, and couldn't do that. And then she heard about us. We met for a coffee, and we clicked. And Francis came back to her with the idea of the 250th anniversary, and I told her I would love to do that. She said, okay, why don't we do something? So we started brainstorming on a limited edition of 250 bottles that would include a scent that Francis was to create exclusively to the House of Baccarat. So we had a contract that said literally the fragrance formula belongs to us and the right of use belongs to them. And they can only use it for 250 bottles in crystal. It was housed in a crystal bottle designed by Georges Chevalier, one of the famous designer at the house, historic designer at the House of Baccarat. And so we did that in 2015. Those 250 bottles, Baccarat was finding it hard to sell. And I had a network at the time of about 350 locations. And so I offered to the CEO of Baccarat to propose it in our network. And this is how we started selling it at Neiman Marcus, the crystal bottle, and in some other locations.
What was the price then of those 250 bottles?
I don't really remember, but it was in the thousands of euros.
I imagine.
It was limited to
yes.
And even the cost of making it. I mean, I think the cost of good was the cost of good was in excess of 2,500 euros. Yeah. Because to make a bottle of crystal, sometimes you have to we call it in French la gâche. You have to break maybe 10 bottles every time you want to make one that is correct. And it requires hours and hours and hours of manufacturing. And so we were able to sell those 250 bottles between our two networks, but predominantly in the Maison Francis Kurkdjian network. And in order to sell it, we had little samples and we were wearing it. And I remember even when the first time Francis handed me the vial, when we were still developing the scent, I was wearing it in an Uber to go to a meeting at Baccarat. And the Uber driver stopped at a traffic light and looked at me and said, "What are you wearing? This is the most beautiful perfume that I have ever smelled." It was in the development phase already. And then I was living in New York at the time, because the US market is a big part of our business. And I was queuing, I think it was at Williams-Sonoma on Columbus Circle. And again, the lady at the cash wrap, I was third in line or fourth in line, just said, "Someone is smelling so incredibly delicious that I'm going to have to smell every one of you and know what you're wearing." And it was me. And I told her it's not available. It's limited to 250 bottles, etc.
I mean, do you kind of get a spine tingle where you think, wow, we're really onto something extraordinary here? Did you already know then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was extraordinary, but it was also extremely difficult because the smell was changing when it's exposed to heat. The manufacturing process was very difficult. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy scent. It was an extraordinary scent, but it wasn't an easy scent. And then Kelly St. John's, who was the DMM, the head of beauty at Neiman Marcus, kept bugging me, "Marc, this is the most beautiful scent." And I love Kelly. We're still very close and we're still friends. And she kept pushing me, "Why can't you put it into Maison Francis Kurkdjian bottle? Why you should do it?" And honestly, I would be lying to you if I told you that the idea didn't cross my mind. It was an extraordinary scent. The story was genuine and legitimate. It was us going to them. It was the encounter, the dialogue between one of the most beautiful historic heritage craftsmanship houses in France and one of the most talented perfumers of his generation. The name came to us during a conversation where Francis asked the CEO of Baccarat at the time, "Why do you have this red dot into every one of your chandeliers?" And this is how she explained to us the process of what we call in French le rouge alors, the process of Baccarat being able to manufacture red crystal, which requires them to heat crystal at 540 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, adding 24 karat gold glitter to it turns it naturally into red, which is the red of Baccarat. And so Francis looked at me and said, "Rouge 540, because red and 540 being the temperature, and we had the name. And so the whole story made sense. We always agreed together that we would never put another name on our label. It was Maison Francis Kurkdjian. And so this is, you talk about creative and business tension. I went on my PowerPoint and I took a label and I put the logo of Baccarat and I put with our Bauer Baudonnier, the Rouge 540 below. I designed the label red with a gold frame, and I put it with a gold stopper. And I went to Francis and I showed him the result of this creation. And I said, "What do you think?" Thinking genuinely that he would say, "Marc, we decided we would never put someone else's name on the label." And he looked at me and he said, I see where you're going. And I agree with you. The story is unique and the story is genuine. How are we going to convince Baccarat to do so? And this is where the architecture and the business element steps in. And I go to Baccarat and I convince the CEO of Baccarat. They were maybe a 100+ million company at the time, and we were a 5+ million company at the time. And I convinced her.
This is 2000
This is 2015. 2015.
Okay.
And I convinced her to enter with us a licensing agreement by giving her an offer that she couldn't refuse. And she loved us, and we loved her back. And Neiman Marcus gave me an order for 10,000 bottles, which created a market. And basically, we went from there. But she forgot at the time that she needed her board's approval to agree on a licensing agreement with Maison Francis Kurkdjian. We went on. Neiman Marcus at the time had an event called Conclave where they would gather all of the beauty managers of all of their stores. I think at that time they had 38 stores in front of vendors, and every vendor would go on stage for 10, 20 minutes introducing what's going to be the novelty of the year. And we were prepared to step on stage with Francis and to talk about Baccarat Rouge 540 being exclusive to Neiman Marcus. The day before, we realized that the CEO of Baccarat didn't have the authorization. Yeah. We got the authorization 5 minutes before stepping on stage. And so you see, the story in itself is legendary. And
the board must be very happy that they gave the green light
and
for that.
when we stepped on stage and we introduced Baccarat Rouge 540, we manufactured 10,000 bottles. At the time, we were a small company. It would have required us almost a year to sell through 10,000 bottles at Neiman Marcus, if not more. The sell-through was in less than a month. And this is where, the birth of a legend. Now, going back to what I was telling you, how Francis was inspired by the alchemy of crystal, the weight of the glass and the lightness of the light that goes through it, the beauty of it. If you think of it, it's the first time that we are exposed to a sweet, long-lasting scent that is as light as a feather. Its architecture is limited to almost 4 or 5 lines. It's an overload of ambroxan. It's something we've never smelled before, and it's something so comforting, so disruptive, that it became a global phenomenon. If you go on TikTok today, or if you go on Instagram today, and you want to choose a song for your reel or your post, and you type Baccarat Rouge, you have hundreds of songs. This perfume has become a cultural phenomenon, not only a commercial success, a cultural phenomenon. These are the attribute of a piece of creation that becomes part of a new chapter in the art of time. This is where artists are different in the idea that they don't only amplify what is being appreciated today and what is fashionable. They present to us something that we have never heard of to keep the desire mechanism ongoing. And so if we threaten this mechanism by taking away their creative legitimacy, then one day when the art of time is going to change, we're going to hit a wall where there is nothing new coming to us, because those very same people that have the ability to keep us going through change and keep inspiring us in all circumstances will find no ground for them to create, because they are deprived of their fundamental right to protect their creativity.
This is your great passion. And as you said, you're an activist. This is a really, really important message, the legitimacy and the authenticity of the product and the creativity. So I'm very much on board with the message. Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about sustainability and sourcing, and the fact that you completely redesigned your bottles to make them lighter, because you wanted to be on the front foot with that. Is there more to be done? I mean, I guess the luxury industry, by its nature, selling people things, shipping them around the world, this is problematic for the environment. But of course, there has been steps taken.
The first step was taken when we started the Maison back in 2009. We had already at the time the idea of being mindful and respectful of sustainability, and of the idea that if the Maison was going to become part of a culture and part of something that we give to the future, it had to be part of this future sustainably. So our packaging at the beginning, we had to reinvent the boxes. Our boxes were made of recycled cardboard. They looked like a giftable box, but they were made, basically, we took the protection that goes inside a normal perfume bottle and turned it into an external box. So we were very mindful. Our candles had no glass. They were just molded directly with wax. So we were very, very mindful about sustainability. However, I think we shouldn't just oppose brands to consumer. We should look at it from a holistic point of view. It's an ecosystem of brands, manufacturer, regulators, and consumers.
Of course.
As a consumer today, I am responsible. You know, when I buy shoes, I don't want the box. I don't want the pouch. I have tens and tens of shoes and tens of pouches, but when I travel, I can just use 1 or 2 pouches. I don't need 1 pouch for every one of my pair of shoes, and I don't need a box. So how far are we willing to go all together as consumers, as brands, into, for example, reinventing the art of gift giving? And I don't want to polarize anyone. As long as we expect to receive a big bag with tissue paper, with ribbon, with a big box, with many gifts inside, with tons of paper and cards and all that, then we can't just blame it on a brand to be not sustainable, because a brand has also to be commercially viable. And if a brand doesn't meet the expectation of customer, then it's going to fail. So and I'm not talking as the CEO of Maison France L'Argent, I'm talking as Marc Chaya, the consumer. I think that there are many things that can inspire us to continue the dream of gifting, the dream of luxury, by being mindful about limited resources that the planet has for us. For example, the idea that in Japan, when you give someone a gift, you wrap it in a piece of cloth, in a piece of tissue that the person can keep and reuse, or it can be also your own piece of tissue that you give and then you take back, and it's part of you that you wrap your gift with. This could be one thing that can inspire us. Another thing that can inspire us is to create a kind of a journey between something that I'm buying for myself. For example, I'm rebuying my perfume bottle. I'm very happy to take back my bottle, to refill it in the store, and to not take another stopper, and just to leave. Like I told you, I leave only with my shoes. I don't need.
I didn't know that was something you can do. You can take your bottle of perfume and
we are working on it. I'm hoping that we can do that. So I'm hoping that one day, those customers who just want the bottle can live only with the bottle. Those customers who want the total experience of gifting can live with something more sustainable when it comes to the idea of gifting. There are also other challenges. We are reducing the weight of our product. This is a source of anxiety to me as a business leader, because there is a saying that when something changes in the bottle, even if the scent is strictly the same,
the psychology of the consumer
is going to say the scent has changed. And it's proven statistically. It's proven. So we need to explain more and more that the scent itself is not changing.
And the stability doesn't change.
The stability doesn't change. It's just that, for example, we are reducing the weight of the bottle. We are replacing our very heavy stopper with lighter stopper made of recycled aluminum. We are reducing the big boxes where Baccarat Rouge 540 is hosted in 2027. All of our boxes would be in line with what you have today on Aqua Universalis and Grand Soir, which is it's beautiful still, but a more adjusted to the size of the product. We are using more sustainable components. So the train is going. Yeah. But again, it's not, I think it's an ecosystem where we all have to work together for a better future and not opposing one to another. We can only win this battle if, as consumer, as brands, as manufacturer, and as regulator, we work together for the future of what? Of a planet that we all live on.
I read, Marc, in a previous interview that you gave, that the revenue of Maison Francis Kurkdjian had increased 20-fold in the last 10 years. And so I wonder, as that happens and you're scaling the business, is the consumer different, or have they just got more diverse? Is there a particular geography that became interesting that you refocused on? You said already that you started looking at the USA and France.
For sure, the consumer has evolved. When we started the Maison, we were talking to the very, we call the perfume affectionista, or those who were really, really, really looking for something that is very, very differentiating. When you know that Baccarat Rouge 540 is one of the best-selling scents in the world, you're not only talking to this customer, you have increased your customer base. However, what I can confidently say is that the core elements of doing a Baccarat Rouge or the core element of doing maybe a Grand Soir or a Petit Matin are exactly the same. The craftsmanship, the quality, the passion, the quality of the network are still the same. Of course, we are talking to more people and our customer base has widened, but our distribution, the nature of our distribution networks didn't change. We are still only available in the most beautiful department stores in the world. Now, what changed, for example, in the US, is that we have expanded from being exclusive to Neiman Marcus to then opening Saks, which is now part of Neiman Marcus with Saks Global, and then introducing Bloomingdale's and then Nordstrom. Of course, we are growing with a retail partner, but we are growing steadily with discipline. We're never adding more than 30, 40 doors a year. Over the past 15 years, we went from zero doors to approximately 1,000 doors. When you know that in the fragrance world, you can go easily to 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 when you are more in the wider audience distribution. The experience in store is something that is extremely important to us. We want our customer to go through the stories. We want them to have the quality of time, the time to understand what's going on, to learn about the artistry, to experience the wardrobing of all of the perfume that the Maison has to offer. So yes, we are talking to more customers, but the way we are talking to them and the passion that we are using to talk to them are still the same as the early days.
So we're going to move on to just a few questions that I try to ask lots of the guests if I manage to make the time. So one is, what advice were you given as you were starting your career, or if you'd like, as you were starting Maison Francis Kurkdjian? And then the second part of the question is, what advice do you give, having now been through the process, either to somebody in the perfume fragrance world or just in general, good entrepreneurial advice?
I was blessed to receive sound advice, and I was also blessed not to listen to all of the advices that I was given. Because, of course, when we started the Maison, a lot of people around us were generous enough, giving us their path, where they succeeded, how they made it, some of the big mistakes to avoid, and these were very helpful. But also, when I decided to leave Ernst Young, where I was a partner, where I had a big future, some people gave me the advice not to leave Ernst Young. They told me I was making a mistake. They told me not to go towards this, that it was risky, and I was being unreasonable. And so you have to have a very solid backbone within you to make sure that you can curate the advice that you receive and not be blindly influenced by it. Because at the end of the day, you know your truth and you know your story and you know your abilities. The advice that I tend to give, and I'm never shy of giving advice when people ask me, is to be structured. Especially if you want to be an entrepreneur. It's not just something that you can take lightly. You need a minimum of competences, whether they are strategic, whether they are financial, whether they are organizational. You need a backbone where you know yourself because you're going to be very challenged. You need certain skills that are indispensable. They are extremely important. For example, your ability to attract and motivate and inspire teams, your ability to sell your story, a story that no one have heard of, and to convince others that they need to invest in it alongside yourself. So these are elements that doesn't come automatically. You need to make sure that you have them. Invest in your education, invest in your experience. However, I'm very inspired to see young entrepreneurs do beautiful things. I'm also very happy to see that the path that we started with Francis Kurkdjian about, giving the opportunity for a perfumer or a creator to start and put their house on their name on the label. We're seeing more of that happening, and it's very inspirational to me. And so, yes, and then choose also your team, choose your partners. We chose to go within LVMH Group, and it was one of the best decisions that we took with Francis. It's a group, for example, that has really multiplied tenfold our confidence in ourselves, our ability to accelerate, to learn from others. They came with a lot of kindness. They have high level of expectation, but they also give you the tools to do it. And it was an amazing ecosystem for us to thrive. So every choice that you make, every decision that you make has to be sound and in full coherence with what you want to accomplish over the long term.
you mentioned LVMH, so that is one of the questions that I hadn't yet asked. When that came to you, was it obvious to you that was the correct path, or did you deliberate?
It was. I didn't tell them.
No, that's a poor negotiating strategy.
We told them later. Look, we've managed to build really an exceptional journey with LVMH. Yeah. We were treated exceptionally well, and we grew immensely with them. We've multiplied our revenue 20 times. I don't think I could have done it if I was alone. Getting access to talent, getting access to sophisticated tools in order to accelerate. It's not only, even if there is demand, you cannot fulfill the demand with coherence, stability, and over the long term if you don't have the right tool. When we were still independent, most of our competitors started selling to bigger groups. And this is the logic of business, is when there is a field.
At some point.
But not only is when there is an unexplored field of business that is promising, bigger entities tend to look at new trends and then they internalize them by acquiring the champions into this new field. And this is what happened with the ultra-luxury niche fragrance segment. And so we were competing at equal tools and equal force with everyone. And one day we were the last brand that was still independent. And we are French. We value the French culture. We value this French way of doing things. And it wasn't natural for Francis and I to go to a company that was non-French. And looking at the French ecosystem, there are not that many partners that totally respect the integrity of a brand. You don't become just a business unit. You are a brand. In LVMH, we are independent CEOs running our P&L. We are respected, we are accountable, and we are empowered. And so, yes, we knew it was going to be LVMH because it's the only group that treats you independently, that values the freedom of creativity. At LVMH. There is, and there will be some of the most iconic creators in the history of luxury and fashion. At LVMH, there is this belief that desirability only is the important thing, that commercial success is the consequence of desirability. And that desirability derives from high quality product with high imagination and high sophistication in the creativity and the respect of this entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we knew we wanted to go there.
I mean, that is the Bernard Arnault mantra.
Exactly. And when the dialogue started, it was for us natural. It took some time, and we were young entrepreneurs, and we wanted to make sure that things were safe. And you know what? We were only, I think at that time, 12.7 million euro company. The group was so gentle on us. And it happened so naturally. And we've been there for 9 years now with the group. And it's been the most fantastic journey.
Amazing journey.
Logical. Yeah.
So I'm always interested whether my guests have a dream project, something that you would like to do. Doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with Maison Francis Kurkdjian. Is there something?
There are many things. And I was also blessed being an entrepreneur. Alongside what I have accomplished with Maison Francis Kurkdjian, I have always been an activist in the fight against HIV and homophobia. I have started an endowment fund called Link that has contributed over 5 million euros in subsidies to NGOs working in France in the fields of discrimination and the fight against HIV. I have started another endowment fund that is today financing education, because I believe education is the only barrier to regression, is the only barrier to hatred, is the only barrier to making people believe that because we're different, because we come from a different background, then we have to hate and fight each other. And so I have dreams in the future. One of them is to continue the activist in me that met Francis Kurkdjian and wanted to bring back the perfumer in the center of the stage hasn't finished. The activism will go beyond Maison Francis Kurkdjian into making sure, hopefully in my lifetime, that we can protect intellectual property, as I said, long enough during this talk. I would like to continue to expand my philanthropic initiative. I like to learn. I'm currently studying history of art. I am fascinated about contemporary art, and I'm learning more and more. I attend a lot of auction room. I go to all of the art fairs. I also would love to give back. I was a teacher when we started the Maison back in 2009. I was a teacher at HEC, and I would like to go back into the fields of giving back through education and many other things. So I am totally open to life. And I know that there are many new things ahead that I would love to do. And hopefully life will give me time to do them.
Wow. I love this answer. But Marc Chaya, all that remains to say is thank you so much for your openness and for sharing all of your insight and knowledge. It's been a really wonderful conversation for me, and I'm sure the listeners will enjoy it a great deal.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed the interview. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Compelling. I've been overwhelmed by encouragement and positivity since beginning this podcast. If you'd like to support, please share, follow, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. It really helps the show to grow. Thank you for listening to Compelling.